I'm Rob, and today we're at the Anglers Inn in Bishopstoke, and we're going on a lovely circular walk around the Itchen Navigation. So the Anglers was built in 1824, very different to the Anglers you see now. It's been rebuilt at some time, and it sits along Riverside, right opposite the river. Now in the very old days there weren't railings on that river, so you can imagine what happened at kicking out time. So we start our walk walking up the hill past the Bishopstoke Memorial Hall and the bins. So on the right is Glebe Meadow, which is a nice local park, a play park, somewhere to take the kids maybe when you finish the walk. Now opposite Glebe Meadow, where Riverside meets Church Road, we're going to go down to Bishy Beach. So this is why it's called Bishy Beach. It's popular with youngsters for paddling and dogs. Anyway, I'll go down the steps. And there's a lovely view down Riverside. And the other side of the bridge, bit of a weir. Out of interest, the other side of this bridge is Bishopstoke Manor, which is now flats. So coming up from the bridge, you go into the grounds of the old St Mary's churchyard. This church remained, I think, until about the 1960s, when it was demolished and a new one built up the road. Also the name of St Mary's. So if you continue through the churchyard, old churchyard, and just follow the gravel path, and it takes you round to what the locals call the Barge, which I'll explain in greater detail later. So it's a churchyard, so as you know if you've watched some of my videos, there's a yew tree. Same old story again. Christians believed it was a sign of death and rebirth because the dipping boughs of the tree and sometimes reshoot in the soil, making new life from old. Anyway, we turn left at the yew tree to walk over the bridge down to the Barge. So walking down now towards Bishopstoke Lock. So this is the Itchen Navigation. It's a canal that never quite made it into being a canal. A navigation with an improved river as opposed to a canal which is built specially. And that's what this is. This is the improved River Itchen. It opened in 1710 to connect Winchester with Woodmill in Southampton and then the Southampton water and the sea. Now before even it was made into a navigation, boats did come up here, and it's rumoured that the stones of Winchester Cathedral were built from stones in Caen, which were brought up the river by boat. Anyway, 1710 they built a navigation to improve things. It wasn't a very successful canal. It went on for a few years. There was a maximum of 6 boats that used it over the years, so there was never a great deal of trade on it. The death now really came in 1840 when the London South Western Railway reached here on their Waterloo to Weymouth main line. So it rumbled on after 1840 to about 1869 before it eventually closed. But since then it's left a legacy for the area of great walking, as we're about to see. So, turning right over the bridge, you can see that that was an old lock. It's just a weir now. As I say, it's old Bishopstoke Lock. And you can see the reinforced walls of the improved navigation. But anyway, when you cross the bridge, a handy milestone, and we turn right. Walk up alongside the weir, parallel to where we walked before. So the River Itchen is a chalk stream like the Test, and it's a biggie for anglers like this chap. He apparently caught a 12-pound salmon a minute ago, but he threw it back. Morning.
Hi, thank you.
So gorgeous houses on the opposite bank. Bishopstoke was a very well-to-do place before the arrival of Eastleigh. Someone else enjoying the water. Whoa! So, one of the many sets of sluices along the river that control the flow. I'll say that's the main Itchen, and this river that it feeds into is the Barton River, and that used to run a mill called Barton Mill, strangely enough. That's lovely clear water, as I've said in many videos. It's a chalk stream which Hampshire is blessed with. Only about 200 in the world, and Hampshire's got a few of them. So, this is the bailiff for the river, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what's in the river.
Yeah, this is the River Itchen. It's probably one of the most cleanest rivers in the UK. It's a chalk stream, really rich, and as you can see it's got plenty of eelgrass, fresh weed, and it's got lots and lots of different species of fish. The main species of fish in our Hampshire chalk streams is trout, brown trout, rainbow trout. You get the odd sea trout. It's got plenty of grayling, minnow, perch, pike. It's got a real good sort of comeback of eels. Eels have been on the sort of missing list for a good few years, but they've started coming back now, which is good to see, which is a good sign of a clean river really. And yeah, there's plenty of big roach and sort of stuff like that. It's a beautiful river.
That's really good. Is there anything particularly sort of rare and special to a chalk stream that you don't get anywhere else?
Yeah, grayling.
Grayling.
Grayling predominantly live in cleaner sort of chalk streams, and that's what the River Itchen, the River Test, you've got the Hampshire Avon and I'm trying to think the other one down in Dorset. But yeah, grayling. Grayling are predominantly sort of more found in clearer chalk streams. So
well, thanks. That's
no
very interesting. Thanks very much.
No worries, mate.
Have a good
Thank
day. Well, somebody's got to be brave to use that. I know you saw me on the Lymington walk having a bit of a swing, but I think I'll give a pass on that one. As the bailiff said, this is a beautiful river and very, very accessible. I know a lot of people go swimming in here. One of my friends, Sue, you know who you are, Sue? She does a bit of winter swimming in here, ice swimming indeed. Don't catch me doing that, but I can understand it's lovely. Every corner, a beautiful view. Hey! So you got all this beauty along this river, and yet sitting right next door, over there, we've got all the sidings for the railway, Network Rail. A little bit later on, the aforementioned Waterloo to Weymouth main line. So this is the point where we go underneath the Waterloo to Weymouth main line. So a little tip if you're house hunting and you want a house by the river that doesn't flood, Rosebery Crescent off Twyford Road. Lovely gardens that back right onto the river. So I wonder why they bricked up the main arch here to make it a small one. This isn't the navigation, this is a little side tributary of the Itchen. There are several small little bits of the Itchen that run parallel. The main navigation is the improved bit, which is the bit we're walking along. This is a little side bit. So yeah, a bit of a mystery there. Anyway, back onto the main path, which is over here, which we came off in the first place to have a look at that bridge. And there's that house in Rosebery Crescent again. And you can hear how close the railway is. Can't see it unfortunately, it's beyond the bushes. Well, London Transport, if you're looking for a bus stop, that's where it is. So we're leaving that bridge to the left, we're not going to cross it, that just brings you out onto Twyford Road in Eastleigh. You're going to carry straight on up the old towpath. The bee. Don't know what it's up to. Now if you're fond of a carvery or two, or a possible another starting point for the walk, that's the Ham Farm Harvester in Twyford Road. Very nice houses on the riverbank. Hey, look at Mama. Okay, just watch yourself on this bit. Ooh. Sort of the scope of water if the river gets too high under the second screen. I don't know if you'll be able to see them, there's a little group of minnows in there. So we go under the main line again. Lovely and cool under these arches. So that's Allbrook Lock in the background, but there's a road bridge before that. And this is where we leave the river for the time being. And we go up onto the main Eastleigh, Colden Common, Winchester Road. So crossing the road before we turn right, there's Allbrook Lock. Again, very popular place for swimmers, but don't see any today, which is really strange with all the kids off and the sun being so hot. So turning right along the main road, little farm to the left, a farm shop, and they've got llama and alpaca and all sorts in there. So something is causing a very long queue. I didn't notice when I looked at the bridge, usually when it's like this something's stuck under the bridge. And that's why a local group were fighting the so I think a lot of people are turning around now. There must be an accident blocking the road the other side of the bridge. So there's a clue, ambulance, hope everyone's alright. Anyway, we're crossing over the bridge, and this is High Bridge. At the other side of this bridge, we will cross to go alongside the river. Just take a little look down here. Beautiful. So the path goes down by the fence. More brambles and stingers. And continue to follow the path along. So these lovely gardens, some smashing flowers. So through the kissing gate choice is left, or choice is right, and we go right. And we strike off across the field towards, in the distance you see a pylon and some woods. But that's where we're heading for, those woods. That's called the Lloyd. Just keep heading for the gap in the hedge. Keep walking. So heading towards the pylon. A little kissing gate over another little stream that feeds into the Itchen. So many of these, and that's part of the reason why the inspector turned down a big building plan by Eastleigh Council, because there's just too much water feeding into the Itchen, which is a protected river. So there's our well-defined path going on. But before I do, it's pub quiz time. So, your question is, these are all over the landscape, these pylons. When was the first one built? I'll give you a second to think about that. So, the fun fact answer to that is the first pylon was built in the UK in July 1928. And that was near Edinburgh. And we're heading for the gate at the far end of the field that goes into the little patch of woodlands, and that's called the Lloyd. It's a funny name really when you think about it. Where does the name Lloyd originate from? Well, there's a lot of conjecture, but one of the possible theories is the Norse people, the Vikings, call a slope Lloyd, spelt L-L-E-D, but pronounced Lloyd. So possibly Vikings came up the river, got here, decided to go and have a look and see what was going on, saw the ruddy great hill and said, Christ, we'll call this place Slope. You'll see why in a minute when we start walking up it. Some cows. There we go, to the shady woods where we can keep cool by climbing up a ruddy great hill. Wait a minute. And here we go, up the steps as we start to climb the hill, or the slope, or the Lloyd. Keep left, up the steps. Here we go, up the Lloyd. And at the top, we bend round to the left to follow the path along the fence. And pretty soon the path emerges. This will be Church Road. And here we are in Church Road, Bishopstoke. The road descends that way to Stoke Common, and then down Bishopstoke Lane out to Colden Common. And this way is the way back to Bishopstoke Village. And past one of the many new builds in Bishopstoke. Some lovely old terraces along here. And right at the end is a hairdresser's. And I'll give you some history about the hairdressers. when we get there shortly. So back in the early 1900s, this wasn't a hairdresser's, this was a grocer's store owned by one Mr. Harvey Collier. Now his wife Charlotte lived with him and his young daughter Marjorie. Now Charlotte was a fairly ill type person, so they decided to make a new life in America. So they booked a ticket for the maiden voyage of the brand new and exciting liner, the Titanic. Unfortunately, as you all know, the Titanic hit an iceberg in 1912. It went down, Mr. Harvey Collier went down with it. He was survived by his wife and his daughter Marjorie, who went on to America to try and set up the new life that he wanted, and they settled in Idaho. But pretty soon Charlotte got homesick. It was better for her health there, yes, it was drier, warmer, but she wanted to come home. So they came home to England, and unfortunately in 1916 Charlotte died of TB. Marjorie, however, the daughter, she was 8 years old when the Titanic went down and was rescued. She lived to a good old age and died in 1965. So as we go down the hill, on the right is what was the Mount Hospital, and before that a house called the Mount. Now there's a permissive path that Bishopstoke Park, the elderly person's retirement village, will allow people to go down. So we're going to go down and take a look at that. If you don't want to go down and take a look, you can carry straight on, but we're going down and have a look. So you take the fenced off path to the side of the road. Right, so all along the permissive path are these cages with things in. Now they refer to the time of Mr. Cotton. Mr. Cotton, who owned the Mount at the time, was a member of the Zoological Society. So I go down this boardwalk, and he wanted to make this into a natural history museum stroke aviary. So we take the permissive path down here. It's called permissive not because there's naked ladies or anything down here, it's because the landowners have given permission to use certain paths on the estate, because the Mount is actually historically valuable to the village of Bishopstoke, and so are the gardens, and you'll see the fairly sad remains of the gardens. You can just about make out how grand they were. Anyway, we'll follow on. So dip down here, access to woodland via the permissive path. Ooh. Down the steps and along the path. As you can see, this is the remains of an old, probably a fountain maybe. And we're going left. So plenty of arrows, so you can roam a little bit, as well as the cages with the signs on. And there's another one. Not quite sure what the ship relates to. So there's the river down there through the trees. We were walking up the other side of that earlier this morning. But we carry on the permissive path, and we're wandering this way. So the Mount was famous for its really ornate garden, and there was steps that ran down to the river. You can see the remnants of there. Very fine old specimens of tree. There's a redwood there. More remnants of the old garden. And we got fish in that one, for obvious reasons. So from the cage of fish, we've come up the steps. We're following the permissive path through the Bishopstoke retirement village. So just keep following the paths and the arrows, and you can't go wrong, and you see all the retirement buildings there. And there's an eagle. And that's because Mr. Cotton had an eagle as part of his menagerie. And we carry on, and I'll show you a nice shot of the Mount in a minute and explain some of its history. So this is the old house called the Mount. Now the house was built originally in 1844 by a wealthy farmer, but it was bought a little bit later on from that, not long after that, by Captain Thomas Hargreaves. Now he was famous for his fundraisers, garden parties, all sorts of things. There were always local people on the estate enjoying the gardens, raising money for local causes, like the fire brigade for Eastleigh raised money for that, because the locomotive fire brigade, which had served Eastleigh since the railway works moved down, had decided that Eastleigh was getting too big for them to fund it completely themselves, so they had to make their own arrangements. Anyway, so after Thomas Hargreaves, then the aforementioned Mr. Cotton, he moved in, and he did some extension to the house in about 1893. As I say, he was a zoologist really, and he wanted it to be a natural history museum and an aviary, hence all the birds you see. A bit later on it was bought by Hampshire County Council in 1927, when it was turned into a hospital. As a TB isolation hospital to start with, and then as time went on, more buildings were built and it became like a general sort of geriatric type hospital. That closed a few years ago. Believe it or not, this beautiful house you see had fallen into disrepair, in danger of falling down, and then it was bought by the Bishopstoke Park retirement home people, who have really made a beautiful retirement village here. You can see there's a swimming pool bolted on the back now. They've got their own apartments. Over here, look, more apartments. Absolutely beautiful. And they've allowed us to use the permissive path to enjoy the gardens again, like they did in the days of Captain Hargreaves. So one of Mr. Cotton's specimen trees there. And we've walked around a big loop. So when we get back to the cage with the leaves in, we turn left and we go back the way we've came back up to the main road. So this was the old Bishopstoke Infant School. It now belongs to the Bishopstoke Community Association. And over the road is St Mary's Church. So this is the modern St Mary's Church. It's built in the Victorian times, so it's a fairly new church, and it replaces the one from 1825 down the road. And now the rector is the Reverend Richard Wise, a nicer bloke you could not find, although his predecessor Gordon Rose was a nice chap too. So there's the men's club. I think they play snooker and stuff in there. So that was Longmead Farmhouse. Obviously there was a farm here attached to the Longmead estate. So this cottage on the corner of Spring Lane is one of the oldest in Bishopstoke. And up here, just beyond where that girl sat, is West Drive. And that was the West Drive to the old house. But we don't go down Spring Lane or West Drive, we just keep forward along Church Road and descend the hill, past Glebe Meadow, the Memorial Hall, back to the pub. And this, as it says, is the old rectory. I think there's a chap called Garnier, one of the vicars, that would have been in the old church just down the road. So here we are, passing Glebe Meadow, and the churchyard to the right, as you remember we walked through. You can see down the road, loads and loads of kids in swimming costumes and t-shirts, probably all jumping in the river on Bishy Beach. So it's very busy now. So that's the end of the walk. Very nice walk around Bishopstoke and High Bridge. Lovely. A lot of interest on the walk as well. As you can see, we're now back at the Anglers Inn. It's not open. It's at the bottle. So I hope you've enjoyed the walk. It's been about 4.5 miles. And if you liked it, then you know what to do. Like and subscribe. And until then, I'll see you on the next walk.